Reno, Oklahoma, October 4.
That was a fall chase, which usually are not very tornadic prone type storms, so very unusual. Seems like we get maybe a tornadic storm about every 4 years, and it was a Sunday. I remember it was a Sunday. It was great, and me and Tim were able to sneak off and get up north.
But the problem was there's so much activity already there in Oklahoma, and you get this lots of boundaries, rain cool there everywhere. So we actually got on a couple of cells northwest of Oklahoma City, but they weren't doing very much.
Nice.
We were debating whether we were going to continue north. We saw new development back to the west, and we thought, hey, it's tail end stuff. It's all back here. It's new, really explosive development. We could see a couple of cells going up. So that was our reasoning for heading west instead of continuing north, where I think a lot of the other chasers were. Of course, they started probably Oklahoma City and went northward. We're coming up from Texas anyway, so we're just trying to get to the storms.
So we went to a town called Watonga, and there a storm was developing, and there was kind of a hole in the cloud cover. So it was sunny there, and this storm was developing in that hole of the cloud cover. And so I said, well, this has some potential, but I didn't know it at the time. It was already producing a tornado. It was not very visible at the time, especially from our vantage point. We were east of Watonga, but it was producing a tornado that crossed just south of Watonga.
And it was incredible with right off the get-go. Once we saw just the storm itself, there was a big separation from the updraft and the precip area. We hadn't seen that since, it reminded us of April 26, 91, where you had the big separation between the updraft and the precip. You're going to get a long-lasting storm based off of that. And we no sooner got south and got on the road to Watonga and just had started to turn, had the wall cloud come into view, we were starting to turn on the road that went west to Watonga. And immediately tornado came down off to our southwest, and it was probably 10 miles away, but it's flat out there, you could really see. And it was such a large tornado off the get-go that we just pulled over. We pulled over and set up right there.
Okay, violent rotation. Good backlight. Very nice.
It was absolutely, we were in the absolute perfect position. We were due east of the tornado, literally due east of it, about 4 or 5 miles. And so we were able to get the structure of the storm. Carson had a wide angle lens, so he was able to get the whole structure and the tornado, and that's what he likes. He likes to get the structure and the tornado there in one shot.
Well, since I do most all the driving, I had rigged up a monopole between my seats, and I had a video camera running there. So I had it positioned on a swivel, I could move it. So I just had it running, the video camera, and then I got out with my tripod and had two 35mm slide film cameras at that time and was taking pictures. So I had a long lens and a wide angle lens, so I got great structure shots, and then I could zoom in on the tornado when it was coming across to our north as it passed, moving from west to east. Got a full life cycle. So we got the whole had full mature stage all the way down to when it roped out. It just got off to our northeast and it roped out.
The sunlight comes in and illuminates the bottom of the tornado bright orange, which is just, icing on the cake when that happens. And then it goes across a grove of trees and begins to pluck these trees out, and they begin parasailing around in a helix as they are falling back to earth, root balls and everything.
They were just rotating around the circulation. They finally get out far enough from the circulation that they would just drop. So some of these chasers nowadays that want to get up close to it, they need to see something like that where you're not right up at the tornado, but you got a whole tree that's going to finally get out far enough. It could come down and plant right on you. So you still got to be cautious of, it was out in the open. It was great. It only hit one structure, and that was right there on I think it was Highway 33 when it crossed, but it was abandoned. There was nobody living there at the time, but it did strike that house, old house. But that was it. That was the only structure it hit.
And then after that tornado, then there was a third tornado near the town of Dover, and we followed that. We were not in a great position there. We were south of the tornado looking north, so we had a kind of a dark gray tornado on a gray background.
Tornado on the ground, pull over on the left.
Somebody in the city of Watonga to go by and check with the hospital to see if they need any.
Of course, that when we were driving, most of the time we were headed east, and then we finally got to the main road to go north, and we intersected it. Again, these weren't wedges by no means, but they were really nice photogenic tornadoes. So,
but nonetheless, we could see it and across the road in front of us, and went on. But yeah, it was a spectacular day. And then we talked to other chasers, who a lot of them were not on that storm. A lot of them were on other storms because there's so many storms out there.
We started off in North Kansas because we got seduced by the moderate risk. We're thinking moderate risk, you got to go where the moderate risk is. Turns out that was more wind driven, and that was the main jet core was going right through there. So the storm we did intercept early in the day was moving at like 65 miles an hour, completely outflow dominant, flew by. And so Matt said, hey, let's dive back south into Oklahoma and maybe try to get out of the nose of this jet, and maybe we can get some better storm motions, which we did. And we broke out in the middle of a storm, and then once we cleared that core, we were in between two, ongoing supercells just north of Stillwater on 35. I just remember, I don't know why I didn't notice it before. I don't know why I looked over when I did, but I just looked to the south, the east southeast, and there's in progress a big stovepipe with a debris cloud. And I couldn't talk. I was like, ooh, I pointed across Matt's chest, and he was getting really annoyed because I had my finger like right in his face. And he's like, what? And I'm like, look to the southeast. And there was a big lowering further southeast of the tornado, which he thought I was indicating. And he's like, I see it, dude, I see it. And I'm like, no, look there, 4 o'clock. And he looks over, and I'll never forget it because he used military time. He goes, holy S, 1848, we got a big tornado on the ground. And back then, I chased for Channel 9 when I first started in 97. And sort of 98, but not really. And we'd kind of parted ways, but I still had all their phone numbers. So I called Channel 9, and a guy picked up the phone. Of course, Watonga is ongoing. That's the tornado of the day, and they're all over that one. That's been happening. We don't know about it. And so I'm like, yeah, this is so-and-so and so-and-so. We're on 35 looking east-southeast towards Stillwater. We got a big stovepipe tornado with debris in the air in progress. And he flipped out because they had no idea that was happening. He goes, you're where? You got what? Okay, hang on. And he I heard him cupping the phone and talking to Gary or somebody, and he was like, thanks, man, we appreciate that. And he hung up. And then that was that. And then, of course, I'm not videotaping the tornado. I have no video camera. It's the best thing I'd ever seen. I mean, bar none at that point in my career. And I remember watching it slowly rope out and accelerating north, and it was like a blue rope, and it just disappeared. And Matt was snapping pictures, none of which came out. About 3 weeks later, I was working at the Vista, which was a bar in Norman up on the 6th floor of this mid-rise downtown years ago. And I was in the break room, and this story came on Channel 9, and it was a couple that lived in a trailer house on the outskirts of Stillwater, and they were saying that basically we had just sat down to dinner, and we're taking our first bites, and all of a sudden Gary broke in and goes, "This is urgent. We just got word there's a tornado on the ground west of Stillwater," and so they put their forks down and walked outside, and it was like coming across the field in front of their house, like right toward their house. So they ran out, went to their cellar, and their home was obliterated. But they survived unscathed. And so they were saying, you know what, if it hadn't been for Gary's warning, we wouldn't be here now. And I'm thinking, that was that tornado that they didn't know about until we called it. And I told Matt about it, and he's like, that's pretty cool. So that made me realize that, maybe you do need to stop and call something in, even if it's just a little, it was an F1, but still, a trailer house F1, that's bad news. So that kind of taught me that, take the moment to think about other things, make the call, and you can make a difference. So
I went with my friend Chuck Floyd. Charlie Floyd was his name. He was a liberal arts student, became a lawyer eventually. But we were in the same Ultimate Frisbee group that would play outside, and we were playing Ultimate Frisbee out there, and then the tornado watch was issued, and we knew there was going to be an event. And I wasn't allowed to have my car down there because it was freshman year, and you're not allowed to have your car at OU just yet. So Charlie had his car down there because he was able to get an exemption as a freshman. And I convinced Charlie to go on this chase and head up there. So it was Chuck Floyd and I. We went north on I-35, and we gained a visual of a shelf cloud up in Kay County up near Blackwell, this massive mega shelf. It was incredibly laminar, striated as it was approaching. And I didn't know what I was doing back then at all. You didn't have really the online resources. So I was a little rusty with my storm structure. I thought a massive tornado was about to hit us. and we passed underneath an overpass, and I told Charlie, we got to take shelter underneath this overpass. This thing's going to get us. And we abandoned the vehicle, wedge ourselves up underneath the overpass, and just get blasted by 80-mile-an-hour straight line winds from a squall line, completely soaked by rain. Absolutely no reason to be underneath the overpass anyway. And then we heard of more tornado warnings off to the south that we were listening to over the radio. So we started blasting south on I-35. And I knew that the tornado was in the southern side of the storm and that you had to blast through all the rain and the hail or punch the core to get visual of the circulation. So we kept punching cores over and over again. We saw rotation above us. And then finally, when we got down near Perry, Oklahoma, we punched the core, looked off to the east, saw the flat base, and saw two tornadoes right next to each other. And I just remember pure elation, happiness. I finally saw my first tornado. We missed the bigger tornadoes of the day. Down near Dover, Oklahoma was an incredible tornado. Some of my classmates went with more experienced chasers that day and got incredible video. But this one, we went out on our own, didn't know what we were doing, saw the tornado, and definitely felt that sense of accomplishment from that. When it was two tornadoes right next to each other as that storm was heading toward the Stillwater area. I think there was a bigger tornado just to the left of those two. I think those were two tornadoes in the flanking line, and that there was a bigger tornado back behind the rain.
And then that night, we were driving south. That day, we were hopping from supercell to supercell, by the way. So that Dover storm was like literally our third supercell. And 2 supercells after that, we're dropping south. And now it's after dark, and we're coming back home through the city, and we hit heavy rain north of Moore, coming down I-35. And a lot of the media was interested in a storm in the city. So where's this rain coming from? We're south of the city. And they weren't really focused on that. But we got south of that precipitation. We went to the west a little bit off the interchange at Tecumseh Road and set up and just looked off to the west to see if we could spot anything. And sure enough, lightning illuminated a tornado. It was over the Canadian River Valley, like right over literally, west of Moore. It was over the Canadian River. But at the time we thought, oh my gosh, it's a tornado. And it's like in the western suburbs of Norman, northwestern suburbs. So we radioed it, got on a ham radio and called it in. It took a while. Dennis McCarthy, by the way, was the meteorologist in charge, and he was giving an update. And he was giving an update, and he was giving an update. And my friend was just saying, please shut up, Dennis. So he was just desperate to call it in. Finally, he stopped his update, and he called it in and said, tornado a quarter mile west of I-35 Tecumseh. And people heard this. People had scanners, and people were ducking for cover in the northwest suburbs, northwest neighborhoods of Norman. And they really didn't need to. It was a lot further west than that. It was like several miles west instead of literally a half mile away.
So we were coming back down Interstate 35, getting close to OU campus, and there was a tornado warning there with a cell coming up from the southwest. So we thought, oh, this is great. We've actually come up here and got the grand prize, and now we're going to get run over by a tornado in the dark, because it was very close to us. And this is 98, so we didn't really have cell phones with good nighttime radar data. Tim's looking out the window, and it's like, yeah, oh man, it's right there. I can see the wall cloud.
And then I got down to my dorm. I was staying in the dorms that day, and as I came through the door, an RA popped his head out of the basement. He's like, get down in the basement. This is life or death. And as soon as I saw that, I turned around and ran. So I left the building. I didn't want to take shelter. I went across the street to Papa John's and placed an order for a pizza. And then this vehicle with a huge loudspeaker on the roof came by, and it was broadcasting the NOAA weather radio broadcast at the time. So it must have been a chaser. I'm still not sure who it was to this day, but he was just driving around broadcasting the NOAA weather radio broadcast of the tornado warning throughout Norman. And then I picked up my pizza. I was eating my pizza in the parking lot, looking up at the wall cloud, and never gained visual of that tornado. And Charlie had dropped me off, so I had to chase it on foot a little bit. But still to this day, I'm really glad I didn't take shelter.
But that tornado dissipated, but then the next tornado developed much bigger that went right through Moore. And that was one of the tornadoes that year, so we called that in as well. So it's an interesting aside. It was like after that, because the storm developed so quickly, it really sprung up fast. The media and the Weather Service had a much better period of cooperation after that. They realized the Weather Service was onto it first, and I think there was more of a sense of camaraderie between the media and the Weather Service, and I think a lot of that came about because of that evening, but also the efforts that Dennis McCarthy and the Norman office gave into bringing people in to help improve the warning team in general.
It certainly is one of the top. It certainly is the top fall chase for me. Okay. And certainly is one of the top chases because of the picturesque nature of it and the fact that you could set up a tripod for 20 minutes in the same location, not have to move, and just pivot it around, because the tornado kind of did an arc around us, and so it kept almost the same distance from us the whole time. And then of course the ending with the gold illumination and the parasailing trees, all wonderful.
So, not a bad October chase, eh, Mr. Eads?
That's what you call Oktoberfest.
Oktoberfest, eh? Yes.
I like it. I like it.
I think we
Definitely have a steak and some German beer tonight.
You bet.
What a show. What a show.